Hey Cam followers, we're back. It's another intense week. We have the lovely Samantha Bailey with us tonight, and we're going to be talking about adolescent behaviours in dogs. And we're obviously going to be dipping into pain and behaviour. So this is going to be a great topic. We've already been planning for the last half hour. Samantha, please introduce yourself so everybody can have absolute faith in what you say and confidence about the topic in hand.
Hi everybody, I'm Sam. I work as a behaviourist in Swindon, Wiltshire. I've been practicing for around about 15 years now, mainly specialising in working with dogs that show anxious behaviours and working on slowing everything down, making sure that people can see what's going on with their dogs and generally just improving the lives of both the dog and the person.
I love it. I love it. Well, we've got something great in store for you guys, but I'm just going to quickly mention our sponsor. So thank you very much, PitPat, for sponsoring the live. I really do rate these activity monitors. I was actually reading a paper today about the use of activity monitors and whether they are going to be a reliable input into a management plan. And there is certainly evidence with these accelerometers that they do have the ability to show whether an intervention is working. So if you have, say, a dog that goes onto a medication compared to a group of dogs that don't have medication, what happened with their activity level, and did these accelerometers manage to show that? And they do. So if you're thinking to yourself, I really am struggling to work out whether my dog is improving on the treatment plan, the management plan, one of these little gems isn't a bad idea. They're about £39. It's a one-off fee. They're not a GPS, guys. They're an activity monitor. They're pretty damn waterproof. Luna's been wearing hers for about the last 4 months, and I haven't managed to break it yet. So, right, on to the topic in hand. So, first of all, the big heading question. When and how do we decipher between adolescent behaviour and medical issues? Because that's obviously what canine arthritis management is about. Is it possible to do so?
The short answer to that is no. How can you know? We can see the outside. We can't know what's going on inside. So there is, just from looking at a dog, there is no way you can say, oh, that's just him being a teenager. You do not know if that's something that's going on in the brain, or if that's something going on physically because they're in pain, or for any reasons. You can never know just by looking. Never know.
Amazing. So that's like a really good foundational part to move on from, guys. So when a behaviourist, a dog trainer, a clinical behaviourist says we need to get a vet check to make sure that there's nothing underlying this unwanted behaviour, unwanted by us. We're finding it's not a behaviour that we want to be experiencing. We do need to make sure that there isn't something else underlying it. So, adolescence, what are we talking about? What is adolescence? How can we define that?
Well, if someone's going to put a gun to my head and say, what's a teenager? In dogs, it's roughly between 6 months of age and 18 months of age. That can vary depending on breed. So I usually find some of the smaller breeds start around about 5.5 months. Some of the bigger breeds, it can go on up until about 3 years old. But right. 6 to 18 months, I would say, that's when you've got an adolescent on your hands.
That's when you've got an adolescent. And with your role, because we were talking before we went live, that you have a huge amount of workload at the moment with this age category. It's a big part of your work. And what kind of behaviours are you seeing in this adolescent phase? What's your bread and butter, love?
So the bread and butter is pretty much everyone phoning me up saying, how do I stop this? He's barking. My puppy is gone. So all of a sudden I've got a Jekyll and Hyde. He's not coming back when he's being called. He's really pulling on the lead. He's jumping all over the furniture. He's nipping. And it's just pretty much everyone going, how can I stop this behaviour? Because they've gone from a nice little bundle of fluff that was just following them around to all of a sudden it's exploded in size. And it's like you've got all these behaviours that the owners just want to stop. And you can feel the intensity on the phone when people are talking to you about it.
Would it be fair to say that you rarely see a case where an owner says he's missing a behaviour? I'm worried that he isn't doing something. Now, this is from Gwen Covey Crump, and I love this because whenever talking about pain-related behaviour, it's change. And she often says, you know, think about the behaviours that are missing as well as the behaviours that have formed. But just out of interest, do you get many calls from people saying, do you know what, I'm really worried that my dog isn't behaving how I would expect him to?
I can probably think in the last year, after, say, because we were expecting all this, like say from the pandemic, you know, we knew this was coming. But I can probably say I've had 2 where people have phoned me up because they're worried their dog's not doing enough. So they are sleeping too much, or they are just sitting on the sofa. They don't want to go out for a walk. So in this age category, I could probably think of 2.
Compared to
some of the, I've had calls from some of the some adult dogs, so over 3, where they don't want to go out for a walk, or really young puppies that don't want to go out for a walk. Right. I do get those fairly often, but in this age category, off the top of my head, I can think of 2 that have said we're really worried that he's not doing this, that he's not barking, that he just seems to sit there and do nothing.
So like in a ratio compared to too much of a behavior, what kind of like percentages are we dealing with? Like if like I guess what I'm trying to say is, for all the people that are listening, it is very common that it's exuberant behavior, too much of something, stop something, oh, stop doing that. But we also have to be really cognizant that it could be the reverse, but it's probably less common. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is fair to say. I just don't think I attract those kind of people. I think I get the ones that are panicked on the other end of the phone. Please do something. So I don't. I'll say actually, the 2 who, now thinking about it, the 2 that did contact me, they have previously worked with me before. Right. So I think they actually understood that something was missing. But I imagine the reason I probably don't get it is people don't know there's something wrong. So unless the dog is really like, oh, I don't want to do anything, they probably don't know something's missing.
No, and I think I guess I'm fishing for something that I think is really important to talk about is most dogs are not lazy, guys. You know, it's not common that you meet a lazy dog. And I'd even go to say that some people I've spoken to said you just don't get lazy dogs. If a dog is not wishing to partake and engage and interact and be part of something, have your concerns about it. And the thing, the breed that immediately springs to mind when I think of that would be like the bulldog. And they're like, oh, he's just lazy. He just sleeps on the sofa all the time. He just doesn't want to do anything. I'm like, yeah, massive hip dysplasia candidate. Get that checked. So, yeah, I just needed to tangent there. Sorry, Samantha.
That's all right. Go off on a tangent. Go for it.
I'm just going to get in there because it's one of those things that you hear as a vet quite a lot. Oh, he's just really lazy. He's really lethargic. He's a couch potato. He doesn't like doing anything. And if I had an adolescent dog and somebody was saying that to me, I would have my ears pricked of, right, let's get a full examination done for this dog. So let's talk about these behaviours again that you see more commonly, because I know that a lot of the followers now are going to be going, is she going to say what I've got? Is she going to say what I've got? So what are sort of things that you're going to see?
Okay, so when I go out, the most common one is not listening when out on a walk. So not responding to me is probably the top one. And then, of course, recall and not walking on a loose lead follows on from that. Next thing I've got is the jumping up when greeting people. So if the dog's off lead, they're running over and jumping up, or if they're in the house, they're always jumping up at guests and don't seem to be able to calm down, or constantly bringing things, or constantly pestering. They won't go away and settle. I'd say those are my top
ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just disappear into why the adolescent period is what we're kind of pulling out from the whole dog's life. What's important about this period? Why do we talk about it?
Dogs are going through a lot of changes during this period. So 3 of the things just to pick out is development of their systems and their sensory systems. So with one particular system is their vestibular system. So they're trying to learn balance. The brain is trying to figure all these things out. So they are going to be jumping on things. They are going to be sort of testing their boundaries, so to speak. So because their system needs that in able to develop. all their other systems, their visual, their hearing, the processing of that is very difficult at this stage because there's so many changes going on. There's a term called synaptic pruning, which has been studied a lot in humans, where the brain is basically eliminating any extra synapses. It is basically restructuring. So you've got electrical and chemical signals that are all changing. And from the outside, if anyone remembers when they were a teenager, it's a very, very challenging time. And the dogs are going through this at the same time when the owners are expecting to have a dog that heels at their side, that does everything they say. So it's all about, oh, he's not doing he's not doing this, he's not walking, he's not recalling. Their expectations and the dog's emotional and physical needs at this time are usually not in sync.
Not in sync. And that's what we kind of got lost a little bit in this topic before we went live, about a negative behavior to us isn't a negative behavior to them. They're not sitting there going, oh, I'm going to be in so much trouble because this is such a negative behavior that I'm just doing this, so not going to like it. They're just going, this is what I need to do. This is what's keeping me in balance. They're not humans. Like, I would give a really good example. If I go out drinking and I know I've got to go home to my parents' house, I'm sitting there going, oh no, this is going to be bad. But they don't do that. They don't realize that their behaviors are negative, do they?
No, they don't. And the wonderful Amber Bateson, actually, and the wonderful Gwen Covey-Trump are actually going to be talking about this in an upcoming conference in September, the APBC Veterinary Conference, in going through all these changes and the behaviors that you see. They're not doing it to annoy you. That's just our interpretation. It's happened to us. It's annoyed us. So we automatically assume, oh, the dog's done it to annoy us, or the dog's done it for whatever other, languages out there at the moment. But it isn't. The dog it's a feeling. It is an emotion. There is no higher brain control over it. Again, This is what Amber is going to be talking about at the APBC conference.
I love Amber.
Yeah, I love her. Amber's amazing. And it's there. And the thing is they're just reacting to it, just like we would. If I'm irritable, I react. I don't do it to think, right, I'm going to annoy my partner today. I just snap. I don't plan it. I really don't plan it, I promise. But it just happens. And it's the same dog. It has to be released. And that's what's going on here. And that's the discord between owner, I expect this. This is what the dog needs. And that's where my job comes in saying, okay, well, let's turn this on its head. You know what you don't want. Figure out what you do need and figure out what the dog needs. And that's so important. Need.
Yes.
What you need, not what should be happening, or he should be doing this or should be doing that. That's a lot of social pressure and a lot of social media pressure as well, where people say, you should do that, you should do that. You catch yourself saying the word should, stop, breathe. What do I and my dog need? And then that's where you start meeting common ground.
And I think that's such an emotive word, because we were talking earlier about using phrases like their behavior, and it's quite emotionless, isn't it? There isn't any feeling of I need to fix that. But when you say my dog's needs, I immediately just kind of get this heartfelt, right, okay, this is serious. I need to fulfill my dog's needs. So it's a good chance for me to plug the fact that we got the lovely Andrew Hale coming to join us. I'm afraid I accidentally cancelled because I got food poisoning this weekend. He was supposed to be on Sunday, but he's going to be with us in a few weeks, talking about something he's very passionate about, as is Kathy Murphy, Sarah Fisher, a big group of them, called Beyond the Operant, and having a greater understanding of the dog's needs over our wishes, wants, and expectations, and how important that balance is, and I'm really lucky with Luna. I have such a great relationship. She's just my best mate, and we just don't have conflicts, but I let her do a lot of what she wants to do, and she lets me do a lot of what I want to do. And I don't know how I would be if I was setting lots of higher boundary. I don't know. I'll learn.
It's exhausting. If you have to micromanage every moment of your dog's life, it's exhausting.
I know. I'm really lucky. Luna came pre-programmed. Like, thanks to Kamal Fernandez, I can't say his surname, but she just came genetically pre-programmed. So I am very, very lucky. So let's move on to, we've done the physiology of this adolescent period. There's a hell of a lot of change going on. This is where now I step in, because the reason you're here is because canine arthritis management, this is a key time as well for the leading cause of arthritis later in life. So the figures are, guys, that 50% of dogs don't get diagnosed with arthritis until they're between the ages of 8 and 13 years, okay? And that's a little bit scary, because we know the leading cause of arthritis is developmental joint disease. And developmental joint disease actually starts when they're young, because it's developmental as they're growing. So what concerns me with those figures is we're potentially missing a huge amount of dogs that are coping. And these dogs that are coping could be being seen by trainers, behaviourists, etc., for deleterious behaviours. I'll probably get the wrong terminology, when they're actually going, no, really sore. So that's the reason that we brought this out. And what we're hoping is that these lives are really useful for canine professionals. I see a number of people. Hey, Carol. Hey, Drew. Hey, Lynn. Thanks so much, Lynn. I am not a dog trainer or a behaviourist. I try very hard just to be a good dog owner. But yes, we want people to be able to refer to these lives for their owners. So if a canine professional thinks, oh God, I really want that owner to understand that this is a potential, there's pain underlying this, please go and watch that live. It will really open your mind to what could be going on. And that's when we now step into talking about a case. So take it away, Samantha. Tell us about this case that you had, which really demonstrates this.
Yeah, so I was brought in to see a male rottweiler. He had been neutered. I was brought in when he was roughly about 9 months old. The behaviours started at 6 months. What started was he was jumping up quite a lot and really mouthing, not puncturing, but leaving scratches. So you know, you've got a massive rottweiler on your arm, it's going to be sore. That then developed into him growling around people passing the food bowl and when going to pick up toys. So at that point, I was basically brought in to say, look, we need to stop this. The term used was, can we nip it in the bud?
That's very appropriate.
So I come in. At the time, I wasn't au fait with how dogs should move in their anatomy. I am learning a lot more now with the fabulous Gemma Hodson.
Oh.
But even at that point, when I just watched, because part of my assessment is just to watch the dog move. I've always done that. I've always had them out into my secure field where I can just see them in an environment and just watch how they act normally. And something was off. I mean, really off. I mean, even I could see at the time his movement was very, very strange. But it's not my field. So I also work with a veterinary physio and said, could you just have a quick look at this video? Something is off. And it took her about 2 seconds to say, yeah, something is really wrong. You need to get that dog to the vet. I should actually mention I do actually work off veterinary referral, but at the time, a basic examination was done, but nothing was found.
Okay. Right. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the owner videos, if anybody wants any idea of how to get them, the lovely Lynn will put a link to a PDF that we have. It's a free resource of how you can collect good videos if you're thinking, oh my goodness, I need to get my dog looked at.
Yeah, absolutely. So back to the vet. And in this case, I like to talk to the vet. Email can get lost. It's nice to have a proper conversation and say, look, this is what I've observed. I really do feel something is going on. Can we take this further? The vet suggested pain medication trial to put the dog onto Metacam, and also suggested x-rays. The x-rays, for one reason or other, couldn't happen until 2 weeks later for all reasons going on. Now, usually when we put dogs onto a pain med trial, I usually don't even start to see things till after a couple of weeks. And I do insist they're on it for at least 8 weeks before and even then we're looking at different types of pain meds. But after 3 days, this dog's behavior chilled out. And I mean to the point where there was still tension. So when people passed the bowl, you could still see the whites of his eyes, but he wasn't full on reacting. To which point I phoned the vet up, said, right, it's been 3 days and things have chilled out by like 200%.
Right.
And surprisingly, when the x-rays were done, it was shown to have quite severe hip dysplasia and also the beginning of elbow dysplasia, and that was 9 months old.
Do you know, it's heartbreaking. Rottweilers are a leading breed of having joint-related disease. So, you know, if you ever want to look at stats of which breeds are really predisposed, then I would suggest going to the Animal Foundation, my God, Orthopedic Foundation for Animals, or go to the Breed Reform Group. Both of them have a really good list of breed predispositions. The Orthopedic Foundation for Animals is amazing because it actually categorizes the most likely. So what the most likely breed to have hip dysplasia, I believe it's the pug. And a lot of people just don't think that they go, oh, a Labrador. And they're like, no, it's not. So it's a really good starting point because common is common. I remember hearing that at vet school all the time. Hannah, common is common. You know, look there first. So can you just describe what you saw with that gait for other kind of people that aren't proficient in that field? What was it that caught your eye?
Really, when the dog's walking, it should be walking along 2 tracks. So,
yeah.
you know, I haven't got 4 paws, but yeah, basically on 2 tracks. Now, what I saw was the front 2 were fine, but the back 2 was like the dog was drunk. It was swing in, and then it would get a swing out, a swing in, swing out. And we weren't on rough ground. There was no stone or anything, you know, nothing to cause. The lead was not bashing in. It was, and like I say, this was off lead as well. And when running, it was something like off Charlie Chaplin. It was just, and
like you see that a lot with little breeds, and people say nothing.
Yeah. And that's what I mean, and that's what the lovely Gwen's going to be talking about at the APBC conference. Is these things exist in these younger animals, and but they're not thought of. And I'll hold my hands up. When I first started with Adolescence, like 10, 15 years ago, my first thought wasn't to check for pain, because you think, oh, they're young dogs, they're fine. Yeah. You know, what's the point in going to the vet? Oh, big mistake. Because, but again, people, who knows how a Rottweiler is supposed to walk? They see them running and moving, and that's enough.
Yeah, and that is a really common thing. So as a vet, you'll quite often hear people say, well, he's always walked like that. And you're like, well, that doesn't mean it's okay. And it is a really difficult area. I'll be honest, Cam started in 2015, really with my love of the grey muzzles, because I just felt they got a real rough deal. You would have somebody come in with a puppy and they'd have the bed and the lead and the matching collar and a bow on it, and they'd be like, I want to feed them the best food, and I want him the best insurance, and I want him to have the best everything. And then the older dog would come in and you'd have the old manky collar and the old manky lead, and I was like, right, these dogs need some attention. And it was very, very quick that I realized that the younger generation are being overlooked, because some of the most loyal Cam followers that we've got, the Cambassadors, people that have been with Holly's Army since the beginning, they've got young dogs, and they're fielding this for 10, 12 years. And I just feel absolutely bound to support these people, because I think it is so overlooked. Definitely something from a vet perspective that I'd like people to take away from this is, yes, your young dog is new, doesn't mean they don't come with faults. And I had a lady once lose her rag with me in the consult room because her puppy was in for a second vaccine and the hips were bad. You know, there's a simple test called the ortolani, which you normally do when they're sedated, but the hips were subluxating, and you could just see she couldn't believe that her brand new puppy was broken. It is possible, guys. It's very, very possible. So please don't be scared of having these examinations, and know what you're dealing with rather than us burying our head in the sand. It was Gwen Cody Crump, I believe, at one of the AVA conferences that said, isn't it the most heartbreaking things when animals are born in pain? So they've got these early conditions. So when they're starting to learn to express themselves, they're learning to be part of a family, they're carrying pain. And no one ever thinks about it. It's just not possible. That can happen.
Absolutely. And it is hard for the vets to pick up. They see them for especially during the pandemic, it's in and out. And so the more videos you take of your dog, and just, we all want it. I mean, everyone pick up their phone now, they've got about 100, 500 photos of their dog, video them. And if you ever do think something strange, take that to the vet, because vets do have it really hard, where they're even more than I think most behaviourists do, where they're shoved through the door and it's like, it's ill. Okay, what do I do with it? So if you can go in with these videos and say, I've noticed this, I just saw this on cam and it's just moving a bit strange, the vet can look at it. And that's, again, it's just kind of information, because the vet can't see a lot of this, especially with a lot of veterinary being the cleanliness with the floors. The dog can't move as normally anyway. But yeah, that's the best thing to do, and everyone's going to love doing this. Just as soon as you get your puppy, just film them. Just film lots of stuff.
Yeah, totally agree. But make sure that when you see the vet, you have the relevant section cut out, because
I
have had some people tell me it's like 7.5 minutes. It's in here somewhere, and you're like, getting a little bit stressed, running out of time. But yeah, what I would always like is some just everyday photos from the side, from above, from the other side, from the back, from the front. Not asking your dog to pose, not putting them in a stance that you like. Natural, average, chilled stance, but then also walking away, walking towards, back, from the side to side. So helpful, really, really helpful. And you can actually send those in advance. So it's not uncommon for a vet to have a note in the console note saying, just look on the files. There's a video for you to look at. There's a couple of photos to look at. And since the pandemic, we're all so much more used to it, because we had a period of time where we were having to do a lot of online video calls. So we're used to seeing it now. So don't forget that. So what happened with the Rottie? And we are going to answer any questions that you've got. So please keep putting them in. What happened with the Rottie?
Okay, so obviously after the pain med trial and the diagnosis, the pain meds continued. With regards to behaviour, we'd already put in place to reduce the risk of any bites and to obviously reduce the risk of any further pain. So in other words, there was only one slippery floor in the house, which was the kitchen. So it was a case of no running about in there. We put a mat down so the dog could sit on the mat to eat, because that is where the bowl was. With regards to reducing the risk of bite, that dog was in the kitchen on its own. There were 2 doors. There were 3 adults in the house. So it was a case of close the doors off. There's a big sign on both doors saying do not enter. So there's one person responsible in the house that did the feeding.
Yeah.
And then with the other things, it was mainly around toys. So he had his own nice big crate. We put another pen around that crate, which I appreciate is not what's possible in everybody's house, but it was in this one, thankfully. So all the toys were in there. So there was no chance of someone just suddenly passing and there would be a nip or a bite. If a toy came out of there, we were doing a lot of things with swap. This dog was able to cope with that. So it was a case of when they dropped it, the other toy was gently rolled away on the carpet, never in the kitchen.
Yes.
And then the other toy was picked up. And the dog actually loved this. In fact, I think by the end of it was a case of how do we get him to stop that, because he just kept bringing stuff. But it was a pleasant interaction between there. And that is where my involvement did end. The owners at that point were happy with the situation. If I did progress, I would probably wanted to work more with the physio, move that possibly into hydro. And then I don't think their finances at the time would have allowed for any surgery. I think they were worried about there was lots of stuff going on. So
they were quite happy to settle with we're not threatened now. We feel comfortable. We know how to manage the behaviours. And that was an acceptable endpoint for them, which is fine. And I think this is great about these kind of case studies, is because they're so real life. If you had all of these perfect gold standard textbook cases, you just feel actually quite dysfunctional. I know I do as a vet. If you always follow what the gold standard case results should be, you'd be like, oh God, I'm just obviously not good enough. But the reality is some people will choose to step out at that point, as long as the threat to both the dog and the owners has been reduced. They know how to manage the situation. Do you know what happened with the dog pain relief wise or anything?
Last I heard, the vet was moving on to a combination of things, and I believe gabapentin was one of the things suggested, but I was not fully involved at that point. But I did make it quite clear to stay in contact with the vet. This needs to be reviewed really often, and the vet actually insisted on being in contact every 2 weeks for the first couple of months.
Yeah.
And then obviously I don't know what happened after that, but I hope they are still kind of reviewing the situation and reviewing. So when they know, it was be a case of look out for certain things. So we also got him around steps for the car.
Yeah.
So I sort of noted if he gets up into the car and you get a grumble, because that completely went after we got him the steps, then you know, oh, maybe there's something going on. So all those little signs, or if you notice any more tension in your dog's body when you've walked into the kitchen after he's finished, I basically said to them, any change from what you are seeing now, I want you to talk to the vet.
Yes.
You need to review the pain meds, and I said you can always get in contact with me as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really fair point now to answer the question of how long can you have a dog on Metacam or any non-steroidal. This isn't a plug for one drug at all. There is no black and white situation here. So if anybody that listened yesterday with Natalie Janssen, when is a dog old? How much is the right amount of exercise? I think sadly there aren't black and white answers to this. I think the most important thing to do is to become very observant and objective. And that's why things like this might be helpful, because no one can tell you how long your dog's going to need it. As for rules and regulations, how long they can be on it, there aren't any. You know, if a dog is responding really well to it, you're not having any adverse events that you're concerned about, then keep going. If they need it and it's working, then that's fine. What I would definitely say is learn to be objective. Okay, you know, have a formula in place that you can be able to speak to your vet or your therapist and say, pain state's good because of this, 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 and this. And there's many different ways you can do that. And I'm so excited. I am speaking to Professor John Innes. Oh my God. June the 16th. Do you know what? I've been trying to get that going on here for about 5 years. So no, this is going to be amazing. John Innes. And we're going to be talking about objective monitoring, because you can have clinical metrology instruments, which are questionnaire based, and you can print them off online and you can fill them in. They're generally anywhere between 10 and 20 questions, and you'll get almost like a numerical figure at the end of it. Big tip, don't look at what you ever wrote before and try and fill them in quite quickly. Don't spend too long time thinking about it. Just guttural, kind of like what is happening. So that's one way that you can do it. You can use things like activity monitors. You can develop your own way. Now, we've got something called the Suspicion of Chronic Pain document, which the amazing Lynn has already put up. Oh my God, Lynn, you're so on it today. But we've also got the chronic pain indicator chart. And these are called officially client-specific outcome measures, where it's you choose the behavior, the posture, the capability that has started or stopped or changed, and you monitor that. So I'll just describe what I used to do with Holly. So Holly's chronic pain indicators for me were starting at the nose. If she was having a bad day, I'd see a lot more of the whites of her eyes because she had cervical disc disease. So she was painful in her lower neck. So she wouldn't want to turn. So she would use her eyes more. And you could really spot that the whale eye. That generally came with her ears being back. She was a very emotional dog, border collie, very emotional. So I could just see that her ears were back a lot more than they would be normally. She would have a slight arch to her back. So she had lumbosacral disease as well. You can see why I run Cam, can't you? She was burdened with pain. So she had lumbosacral disease as well. So she would arch her back and dorsally pelvic tilt. If she was having a good day, it'd be flat. If she was having a bad day, her tail would be limp and vertical. There wouldn't be any tone. There'd be no expression. There'd be no emotional conveyance. It didn't counterbalance. It wasn't functional for her because it was too sore. But when she was a good day, it was like a Frenchman's feather hat. You know, whoa, I'm here. So, and the last one that I saw was whisking with her back legs. Instead of her striding in what's called a sagittal plane and having a nice pickup, ground clearance and placement, I started getting the whisk, and there was a whisking action. So they were my client-specific outcome measures, and I could plot them into a chart initially, and I could, formulate where I am, and I could observe. Over time, I didn't need the chart. It was inherent. I could do it and work out where we were at. Somebody who I adore has recently come up with another idea, and I love this idea. So Laura Eldridge, who is a pediatric physiotherapist, she's using pint glasses, believe it or not, and she has an array of different milk tops, red, blue and green. Likes a lot of milk, obviously. And green is good, blue is I'm not sure, and red bad. And each month, each day, she'll just put the top that demonstrated that day for her. And then she can take a photo of the pint glass and look at the ratios of the colours. I think that's just absolutely amazing. It's a really visual, it's you know, take a photo on your phone, you can just say, actually, we're hitting a few more reds, I can see that. People have different ways of doing it, but it's so, so important, because if you're on an anti-inflammatory and you're thinking, well, actually, here's definitely better. I don't know if I want to be, you know, on this long term. Obviously, you don't want to if you don't have to be. If you're objectively monitoring and you're going back to a good baseline, then by all means, think about stopping it and observing, because we need to talk to you, Samantha, about something that really drives you crazy, is when pain medications stop, behaviours come back, and all work is undone, and they then think that you don't know what you're talking about. They don't think the vet knows what they're talking about. Explain that.
Yeah, so if nothing, I think a lot of the time it's a case of if something doesn't particularly work, it like with any medication, you need to juggle it to make sure you have the right ones. But even so, I think a lot of the time it's a case of, well, things have been fixed, we haven't had the behaviour in a while, things kind of slip away. And then the behaviour comes back because they are, I mean, some of the reasons, so for instance, with where they are sort of growling around the food bowl and around toys, I purposely didn't use the word resource guarding because it is just a reaction. So a lot of the time, if you think about when you are in pain, you're very sensitive of your personal space. And every dog I've seen can react something different. I've had dog react to space, react to certain people because they move in a certain way. But the thing is that all people see is the behavior. If you don't understand what is going on underneath it, that's when you do lose faith. And that is where, if partly where I have failed, if I have not been able to say to somebody, look, the reason is your dog has done this behavior is because this, and demonstrate it in some way. It's no good just blurting out to them. They need, I think a lot of my clients need to feel it, and it's against the law for me to cause them pain. So you just have to try and find as many ways as possible to communicate that fact. And if I don't get that across, then it is very frustrating, because they just then, and I hate to say it, but a lot of the time as humans, we need it fixed quickly. It's, you know, it's upsetting. We don't like the fact that our dog is nipping us or, you know, causing us pain. And we do fall into the trap of going to somebody that says, I can fix it straight away. But if we don't set the expectations, like it's going to take time with the pain meds, or it's going to take time with the behavior meds, or it's going to take time, because I don't do any type of training apart from managing the situation until all medical and things are there, because the dog's not capable. But it is frustrating, but it's a long process. So I don't work with anybody unless they're willing to work with me for a minimum of a month, because I cannot get across the long process. And I think, like most of us, we don't do as well as marketing. And how do you market? We're going to be working together. It's going to take 6 months to solve it. And you got someone else saying, I can solve it in 2 sessions.
I totally agree. And it's no different from the vet perspective. It's quite funny. I'm on social media. If anybody followed Cam in the last few years, we did something called #Blunt Mondays, where the vet in me could just come out and say it as it is a little bit and just kind of go, I said it. But yeah, it's coming back. The thing from a vet perspective is exactly the same. We're really limited time-wise to convey a lot of information, and it is heartbreaking when you know that that animal has got a condition, be it pain, be it something else, and that owner can't get on that train with you and go on that journey with you, and they step off it and you're like, I failed. And it is really difficult. There's one of the things that Cam is there to try and support, is that we hope that vets and therapists and canine professionals can say, we ain't finished yet. I haven't got enough time to spend with you that I want to, but I trust this resource. Please dive in. There is so much in there, because spend the time in there. You'll come back and you'll get where I'm coming from. That's the idea. Okay, so the Rottie, we kind of got to a point where they were accepting of that dog's behaviours that made that dog happy, comfortable, and they found a living relationship. What about people that want to go further and they want to try and, shall we say, reverse the behaviours, not reverse them, but adapt them to being much more integrated into the family? What kind of stuff happens there? Have you got a case that you could potentially mention?
Yeah, so a case sort of similar, or I think it's similar because it's only something I've recently it's only a dog I've met over the last couple of months. Definitely something going on with the back end. I've noticed a lot of roaching on the back where he's literally shifting the weight forward off, so it just looks like the bum sort of sticks up. So again, went back to the vet, went onto a pain trial. The dog was on a pain trial, and this one, oh, I can't pronounce it. No, it's gone out of my head. So it's not Metacam, but it was another non-steroidal. And basically it took 2 weeks, and then things did start to calm down. We weren't getting, this dog again was suddenly rushing around space, around food, and around toys. Very, very protective of its own personal space. Just, it may have been predicting pain. It may have just been irritable and just lashed out. But at the end of the day, the pain was the cause, because as soon as the pain came down, all was fine. We're still working on a diagnosis at the moment, so I haven't done too much, but the plan is we are going to be going, this has been actually happening for 2 years with this dog. This dog's now,
wow.
Yeah, so it's been happening for about 2.5 years, because the dog's 3, 2.5 years. So in my experience, when a behaviour's been going on that long, we've got a lot of learned stuff going on as well. So it's not just in it, there's a lot of anticipatory stuff going on there, a lot of stuff.
Do you know, as soon as you say 2 years, do you know what? Again, heart breaks. Like sometimes, I won't lie, Cam can be an absolute pain in the bum to try and run. But then you say something like that, and I just think, right, got to keep going, because it is all too common. As people know, I've got quite a bad back at the moment, and the idea of being in pain and being not catered for, not being allowed to be catered for, not being allowed to adapt my life to suit my discomfort, heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking, but it's also heartbreaking for these owners, because they, once we've discussed it, they are on it. They are prepared to do the lot. And I discussed how these things can usually go. So it is vet, payment, close relationship with the vet, looking at then bringing in the physio, looking at bringing in, we are also looking at bringing nutritionists, because there are some other things going on as well. Hydro, but then I said it's one thing at a time. We can't just put all it in and it's going to solve it. And they were heartbroken. They just didn't know their dog was in pain. They had just no idea. Absolutely, It didn't even cross their mind. And it's really, but it's one of those things, again, when I'm working with Gemma, she says, right, once I show you, you cannot unsee it. And it is heartbreaking, because I can't look at a dog now and think,
I know. So, you know what? The lovely Lindsay, I have to say her nickname, Lindsay Yellow Knickers. Anyway, she's a vet nurse, and she did the same course as I did many, many years ago. And one day at work, she just said, I just feel like I see ghosts now. I just see them all the time. You take your dog for a walk in the park and you just see poor posture, poor gait, poor capabilities, and you're sitting there going, that's not normal, that's not normal, that's not normal. So we've not only got the obesity epidemic where they're all dog or log, we've also got a pain epidemic where we've got a huge amount of musculoskeletal conditions that just are not being diagnosed, and potentially resultant behaviours because of it, which, sadness.
In fact, behaviour is the first thing you're going to see in a lot of these dogs.
Definitely. Suspicion of chronic pain diagram. This is called the CAM factor. Behaviour change, posture change, physical changes, and capability and gait changes. If you're seeing that, they're all pointing. If you've got a number in each box, whoop, whoop, chronic pain. This is something to talk about with your vet. And there are ways and means to get a really great quality of life. So what have you done with this cockapoo in regards to not just that first line approach of make sure people don't get hurt, make sure we don't make the condition worse, stepping into second line where you're now looking at, well, how can we integrate them back and get these behaviours more in line with what we can live with? What's your thoughts?
So while he's starting the behaviour meds, the first point is just getting him to do anything. So we've got a marker word, not a clicker, far too noise sensitive. So just a marker word. So, and we're just training some very simple things. So literally to touch something, to settle on a mat. Again, we're quite lucky. There's no slippy floors in this house. Everything is carpeted apart from the bathroom, and the kitchen is tile, but it's actually quite a nice rough tile, which I'm going to have to steal because it's fabulous. But it is. So in terms of the dog moving about, the dog also doesn't go upstairs anyway. The dog is downstairs, so we hadn't had to worry about what kind of steps. There's no steps to the back garden. That's something I definitely learned from watching Cam. Not just stairs, steps. So,
small stairs.
Yeah, so there's a nice ramp up to the front, ramp up to the garden. And so what we're doing now is basically working on just some basic communication. So you've gone there, marker, reward. You have doing some basic swaps and some really, really low value things that he really doesn't care much about, but he's getting a treat for stepping away from them. So we're just doing some very, very basic things. So that's going to be great in getting the behaviour meds to kick in. But once we know what's going on and that is under control, we can then start bringing that together and look at, okay, well, we know he growls around the bowl. I would probably change the bowl and integrate the training immediately. So when this bowl comes, good things happen to you. It is more of an approach thing. So we will have a barrier up so that he learns people don't approach this bowl. They only move away from it, or they won't come any further than the barrier. Then it'll be gradually moving away the barrier. But it depends on how he does. I mean, it's been going on 2 years. And if they have to keep some of these things in permanently, they are prepared to do it. But I think considering the change in his behavior once he was on, after being on the pain meds for a couple of weeks,
you're quite positive.
So much more relaxed. In fact, they were one of the adults that actually walked through the kitchen by accident, just didn't realize the dog looked up but didn't react. So it just goes to show, just being on those pain meds, so he wasn't so set. I imagine if they stepped closer, he probably would have done. Yeah, his bubble of personal space went from this to a much wider area. So from the human's perspective, they were just kind of walking in and out as normal.
Nice. I like that. So how long, just so if anybody's listening and they're like, okay, I know that there's a problem. I've been burying my head in sand. I know that I am going to go to the vet and get it checked out. And I know that I'm going to need to start thinking about how I can potentially modify this behavior to make us have a better living arrangements. What kind of timescales do these things take, like in real terms? Because as you say, you see so much marketing online and you think, really? Like, I'll give you a really good example. I kite surf, okay? And there's a real need to get up and riding a kite surfboard within a couple of lessons. You're like, don't know about the sea, you don't know about the wind, you don't know about safety, you don't know how, and now you can go. That's not a good idea to me. But there's that real need. I've got to get up and go, and I've got to be going. Whereas actually taking a slower approach, they're going to learn a lot more. They're going to be a lot more safer on the water. But the marketing for that quick start is going to be the same here, where people go, I can fix your dog in a couple of weeks. What's the real time scale?
This is the thing. There isn't one. And like you say, trying to market that is insane. So what I do when people come to me with these things is I always try and give them a quick win. Anything, whether it's a certain situation. So it might be, the dog is biting us in the evening when we're trying to watch the telly. So we might focus on the management around that so that it's something that be done pretty quickly. It's a barrier. Yeah. And the problems stop. So you try and focus on some of the quick wins. But the way I think it comes down to, people do want a time scale. Is this going to take 6 months? Is it going to take a year? I sometimes try and give an example of a case similar if I can, but I try and avoid those questions as much as possible because there isn't one. And if they are asking about a time frame, although it's perfectly logical in terms of finances, in terms of getting back to normal, then they're not open to thinking, actually, I actually have to change, because it might be. So I'll give them a timescale to say, the pain meds will take 2 to 8 weeks. But we do have to review that. The management's going to work immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So I will break it down.
Good idea.
But yeah, marketing, that's a pain. All I try and market it is in terms I will give you support. Each dog is different.
Yeah.
And I do tend to attract the right people, but I can't help the people that want to say it'll take 5 sessions, take 6. And I know that's how we work. I want to know, I need to get it into my busy schedule. I will accommodate people as much as possible, but I can't help those that are still on that, because if they're so blanket, I want it sorted by then I know they're not open to the fact that actually you're going to have to change your behavior to accommodate your dog's and emotional needs. So I'll try and slip something in. So I do try and send them to several resources so they can start to see about dog emotions and dog needs, or say some kind of quick win or some kind of exercise. So I'll get them to film and watch the dog, and I'll send them. So if they send me a picture of a spaniel, I'll try and send them a video of how this is how a spaniel should walk. What do you see? And just try and do something. But no, I can't help anybody.
No. It is really difficult, because when I used to do my chronic pain home service, I basically said, I'm going to see you for 3 occasions minimum. I'm not coming in for one. And it would generally be a week to 10 days apart. And one of the things that I wanted to say about this 3, the rule of 3, is quite often it takes to the 3rd occasion for them to put a blinking rug down. I'd go in and go, said a rug last week. Oh, did you really mean it? Yeah, I did. And then it'd be like the 3rd week and it'd finally appear. But yeah, there isn't a way that you can really put the time scale on it. But I think people need to realize that a lot of these are not quick fixes. And these are often lifetime management with different degrees of management. You beat me to it, Lynn. You're on fire tonight. I was going to suggest the same to Lynn, TF Dog Services, the CAM Advocate course, because, so the question, guys, Lynn has said she sometimes, she finds it very difficult to converse with vets about observations that she has, being a dog trainer, I think. Yeah, dog trainer, who geeks out on everything, certified in various, feel confident enough to upset someone and suggest they get a thorough vet check. How do I approach that? This is a common problem. You are not in a course called CAM Advocate, and it's advocate because you're advocating for the dog. This is what it's about. We're about the dog. And it's 12 modules. It's pretty chunky course. It's all online. And then you go to then we're back. That was a blip. Yeah, so we share success stories. We pep each other up. We support each other moving forward. So please come and join us and we'll look after you. Having a slight issue with signal on StreamYard. So you've got a bit of a fuzzy colour. It's coming back. It's coming back.
Have I?
So are you still with me? Yeah?
Yeah.
Everything cool?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. The Wi-Fi just went a little bit funny then. Hopefully. It's definitely not my mother on her iPhone. I swear to God, she doesn't use it. Right. So we've done pretty well. I think we've covered all that we wanted to talk about. There was a question up here that I thought would be worth tackling. And I certainly would like to know what your thoughts on it are. It's about obedience. Okay. Here you go. So considering what we're talking about of this adolescent behavior, lots of physiological change, some of the behaviors are because they need to do.
Oh, sorry, Hannah, I've lost you.
Yo, we had a little blip then. Yo, you're back.
Yeah, I think I'm back. Sorry.
Sorry about that. The building next door, and I wonder whether something's affected the cable. Apologies, guys. We will continue.
Yeah, nobody's
That's not happened before. Right. Talk about obedience training, bringing training into that period of time.
Yeah, so I think the need for your dog to do as you say and to be in control in public places is perfectly valid. You do have to have control over, or your dog has to be in control. I don't like using in control of your dog, but so when it comes to it, a lot of it, I think, is you feel, oh, I have to get them to walk, I have to get them to recall, I have to do that. But there are lots of things you can do to manage the situation. So, for instance, they don't have to, there are certain places you can let them off lead, there are certain places you can't. Many people say to me, oh, if there's nothing about, he comes back fine. Well, only let them off lead where there is nothing about. And I do appreciate that can be difficult, but you have got secure field now. There's quite a few areas where you can see for miles. In terms of walking on the lead, that's a process. A lot of the time I meet so many people that start off short. Actually, it's better start off a bit longer. Go places where you haven't got to be by the side of the road. Or as daft, I've said to a lot of people, we've got one client who they're just on a main road. As soon as they get out the front door, they're on a road. So we got a buggy. Dog goes in the buggy to get to the park, then gets out and walks. And they bike chain their buggy to the front of the park. No. So they don't have to take the buggy around with them. Then they can do their training. So it comes down to what do you need? Is your dog capable of meeting that? And have you got to do anything on the part of the dog? What are the dog's needs? So you've got your dog's needs and your needs. Mm-hmm. And if
I guess sorry. I guess you're not saying that. You know what? The internet is not cool today. That's good. You're not saying all dogs are going to have difficulties in the adolescent period. It's about being aware that if they are having difficulties, there could be underlying physiological reasons or even pathological reasons. Is that fair to say?
I think that's very fair to say. You've got to work with what's in front of you. If your dog is, if you're by all means, training is communication. And some dogs love working with you, in which case, build in that recall, build in that walking, build in that. But at the same time, be aware of, you've got to meet your dog's needs before they can do what you need them to do. And if some dogs, they're a dream through adolescence. I've had clients who, their dogs sail through life and they're perfect. They get a new dog and it's like, what is this thing?
I'm going to have that. I am so going to have that. Yeah. Like Holly, I'm just going to do a little reminiscent. Holly pushed me to the extreme. She was just so smarter than me about everything. Luna, oh my God, she is just lovely. I wouldn't say she's very emotionally resilient. She gets very upset if anybody is upset. But she's just, I'll talk to you in about 5 years ago. I've got another dog. I'm having an absolute disaster. But cool. Well, this has been fab. Have we got any more questions, guys, before we go? I'm a little bit on tenterhooks that something awful is going to happen on the internet again, because that hasn't happened.
One thing I just want to say is, if anyone really is interested in the subject, like I say, the APBC are running their veterinary conference on Sunday, the 26th September. It's online, and you can watch the recordings for 30 days afterwards if you get your tickets now. And believe me, our three wonderful speakers, we've got Caroline Clark, Amber Bateson, and Gwen Trump, and they're all going to be discussing all about adolescence and pain. And honestly, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be absolutely amazing.
I'm going to go. I am going to go. I really want to watch this. Gwen's a fab speaker. I saw her do at ABVA, the British Association of Veterinary Acupuncturists, and she did all about acupuncture and the medications that can be used in conjunction. Mind blowing. And whoever hasn't seen Amber Batson, then we've done 2 lives with her, and I'm literally dribbling because she is so good, isn't she? Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Lynn. Do you know what? We love it when people say stuff like this, because it takes a lot to bring all of this together. And we're really grateful to our guest speakers who give their time up for free to come and do this. Cam is self-funded. We're not supported by any bigger organisation. It is completely driven by volunteers. So when we have comments like that, it really does mean the world to us. Oh, look at this. This is nice. Bring on the love, guys. So thank you so much. Thank you, Samantha. I think that was excellently executed, I'd say. I think we should get you back, you know, maybe collect some cases and come back in, say, December and talk through, you know, keep Cam in mind and think that's a good one, that's a good one, that's a good one, and we can just chat through them, because I think people really like real life scenarios, don't they?
It helps you relate, because you can have a bit of paper and, oh, we'll do this, this and this, but when you can see how it should develop and how it can develop, it's just so much easier to relate to when you tell it as a story rather than give it as a, oh, this is what you got to do, tick, tick, tick. So
yeah, lovely. I'm just going to quickly do, here we go, I have to do it before we leave. Hannah's still tap dancing on screen. And thank you to our sponsors. So Cam, as I say, is a self-funded venture. Started it about 5-6 years ago on a shoestring. We are now looking for sponsors, and we are really grateful that PitPat are giving us the attention. I absolutely love the activity monitor. Luna wears one. We're paddleboarding, we're swimming. It's really pretty invincible. It's totally cost effective, and you get a good amount of data out of it. So if you're thinking about how can I be more objective with my dog's management plan, then that is something to consider. Cool. And you can get them in the Cam shop. And the great thing about it is they donate £5 towards Cam for every purchase, which is a godsend. Thank you. I will see you in December. And we'll see you at the APBC conference, which is what date?
Sunday, the 26th of September.
Perfect. And can they buy tickets yet?
Yeah, the tickets are on our website, www.apbc.org.uk. Go on there. There's a nice big picture at the top. Click on it, and yeah, you can get any kind of ticket.
Perfect. And we will see you there. Until next week, guys. I can't remember who we've got next week, but don't forget Professor John Innes. I am so proud of myself. I stalked him on Twitter for ages. So he's going to be here on the 16th of June. Please make sure you attend. Till next time, see you later.